Hey everyone, welcome to the Acrobatic Arts Podcast. I'm Loren, and I will be interviewing some of the top leaders and innovators from the dance and acrobatic industry. If you are a teacher, performer, student, or a lifelong learner like myself, you are sure to find these episodes intriguing and full of inspiration. Acrobatic Arts is passionate about providing current and relevant information for everyone. So please, sit back and enjoy as we share our passion with you and the world. Get ready to join Carolyn Looning along with Acrobatic Arts Master Teachers Meaghan Wegg and Tim Buckley. This interview delves into the differences and similarities for training at the student level versus the professional level.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. I am Carolyn, your host for this week's Weekly Mini, your bite-sized workshop on the hottest acro topics. We have two very busy people with us today. This power couple is with us, and we are so excited for their time. So please join me in welcoming Meaghan Wegg and her husband, Tim Buckley, as they present about the difference in training for our students versus training as a professional. Now, Meaghan studied aerial hoop and contortion at the National Circus School in Montreal. She was a featured artist performing around the world with Cirque du Soleil, as well as the Seven Fingers. Tim is a physiotherapist originally from Melbourne, Australia. He's worked exclusively with elite dancers, circus artists, and orchestral musicians during his 15-year career. Tim has toured the world providing physiotherapy for artists from the Australia Ballet to Cirque du Soleil before settling in Montreal to work at Cirque's international headquarters as a supervisor of performance medicine. He's our consultant physiotherapist here at Acrobatic Arts. Now based in London, Ontario, Tim and Meaghan own and operate the Academy, an aerial and acrobatic arts studio with 2 locations, which is where we join them now. We're thrilled to have you. Meaghan, Tim, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having us.
When I think of it, there's obviously a difference between education and training that we see in the studios for dancers, aerial artists, acro artists, baton twirlers, typically kindergarten to grade 12. And then the difference in training that occurs once one moves on to a professional level of their chosen genre. So I guess I'm curious, because I know you're passionate about this, but why this topic? Are you seeing a muddying of the waters? Is there, noted examples or of expectations being raised by parents or teachers who are perhaps feeling outside pressure for increased performance levels and outcomes?
There's definitely been a really positive forward movement and forward shift in the dance industry, because with instant access to the internet, with big companies like Cirque du Soleil, like Disney, we're being exposed to this sort of hybrid and blending of circus arts, dance, acrobatics, gymnastics, which is a really good thing. And there's been a lot of forward movement within dance medicine as well, which is a subcategory of sports medicine. So there's been good research that's looked into injury prevention and injury patterns and different ways that we could recognize and properly prepare our dancers for dance. Because it's something that historically has been sort of an artistic pursuit, but in recent sort of, let's say years or decades or generations, it's been almost become more sporting. And we're seeing, definitely as a physiotherapist, I work in a sports clinic now, and I see probably as many soccer players, football players, and hockey players as I do dancers, acro, and gymnasts, So there's definitely, some movement that's happened in the industry, a lot more understanding of dance injuries, which is a fantastic thing. But certainly that comes with increased ambition and increased drive to be able to perform acrobatic skills or circus art skills, which if done, not as optimally as it could be, can come with an increased risk of injury potentially.
Meaghan, what did it look like for you when you danced pre-professionally, or trained, I should say?
Yeah, I actually grew up as a dancer and started as 1 to 2 times a week. And then I grew a passion and I grew talent in acro and coupled it with dance. And specifically, I started focusing on that discipline and become a specialist in acro and dance. In the early days, it's a one-off, 2 off a week, and then you have competitions that you train for, and it's a fun experience. But then becoming a more serious dancer, I applied for the National Circus School when I was 15 years old. And back then it was in year 2001. They accepted 20 athletes worldwide at the time. Now they're a much bigger school. They've renovated and they've moved across the street from Cirque du Soleil. So they accept way more now. But understanding that that was exactly what I wanted to do as a young athlete, I understood tunnel vision and I understood hard work ethics and determination right from a young age. My parents were really strong towards my goals and my passions. And they just kept saying, you have to work hard if you want to make this happen. But in the dance studio, I always knew that if I only showed up to class and let the teacher teach me what they had planned for that day, that's as far as I was going to go. I understood that I had to work at home a lot more in order to meet my coach halfway. So I did a lot of self-training and self-evaluating and made plans. So for example, I asked my father to drop me off at the stop sign, which was 20 minutes from my house, so I could run home instead of getting out of the car and just going home. I implemented all these extra training methods at home on my way to dance and on my way home from dance to help with that elite mindset, I guess, if you want to call it that.
Are we seeing that now more, though, coming from the studios or from the teachers that are implementing maybe training programs that are pushing our young athletes before they may be ready?
I think certainly there's different pressures that are exerted on adolescent or child athletes or artistic athletes, if you want to call them that, versus a professional, and looking at a professional, I always say that it's a marathon and not a sprint if you're a professional performer, so if you're working at, whether it's the Australian Ballet or Cirque du Soleil or another professional company, it really is a marathon because you're pulling off, anywhere from 8 to 12 shows per week consistently without much break. The pressures that are on our younger performers or athletes or dancers are very, very different, and there's that sort of element of sport that's come into it with that, healthy competitiveness, but going to things like a Stedford's competitions where you're competing to win medals and to win prizes and all of this kind of stuff. So it's definitely different sort of pressures that are sort of being exerted on those two types of performer for sure.
And I'll add in there as well, regular training versus professional training. We all can start with the same goal. We all work out a schedule that needs to be done for a youth and a pro. We all need to work on the amount of repetitions need to be done with your skills to get it. We all need to work on execution of the skill. And then it depends how strict you are with the professional and it's their first time with the youth. Or we all have a final end goal. So for regular studios today, the final end goal would be execution for an exam or a competition. Or for a professional athlete, it's to be able to execute that same high level endurance with the perfection of the performance for a show 10 to 12 times a week. They're completely different levels, but we all as coaches could have that same schedule, repetition, execution, and final end goal in our daily planning. It just depends on the level of strictness that you need to be with your students.
Yes. So we can have the same sort of mode of operation in terms of how we're training, or progressive training, like we talk about at Acrobatic Arts. The end goal is different. So within that training, then I would assume that there are different, protocols to not only prepare, but save that person for whatever, physically, for their health and well-being, like preventing injuries, things like that. Would that be correct, Tim?
Absolutely, 100%. And one of the great things that I've seen really change over the last, let's say, 15 years, when I first started at the Australian Ballet back in 2006, 2005, during my first sort of 3 years there was this huge cultural shift that was happening where we were working with the dancers to get them to lift weights and to do just strict, straight up strengthening, because dancers traditionally, there's been a lot of Pilates and motor control, proprioception, balance exercises, which are fantastic and super useful. But like I said, there was a real cultural shift where we were recognizing that if you make your dancers strong in their major muscle groups as well, they're going to be able to generate the power that's needed to, as a ballet dancer, take off for a big jump on stage, or as an acro dancer, tumble and land safely without getting hurt, So that's definitely been a really good thing that's come into the industry, I think, in my time as a physio. And I think it's a way that we can really keep our dancers safe, coupling that with a progressive syllabus or a progressive program like acrobatic arts, where we are taking the acrobatic skills progressively and coupling it with strengthening and progressive strengthening as they go. It's a really, really important thing that we're instilling that in our dancers, and that health and that sort of looking after your fitness from a young age, because then when you get to the professional level, that really is a huge part about being able to maintain that marathon and consistently doing 10 shows a week. You have to be doing some cross training and some strengthening work in addition to your show work. Otherwise, it's incredibly hard to keep it up and to stay healthy and fit when you're doing that many shows.
Absolutely. So really a well-rounded athlete that starts from the very beginning. Even we do preschool courses here at Acrobatic Arts, and, starting fundamentally with those basics that just build progressionally, not only those skills, but the mental skills that come along with that. Do you have anything about that, Meaghan, in regards to helping your athletes at that, progressional place where they're young and building into that bigger picture when they are facing possibly someday doing 10 performances a week?
It's definitely something I had, and I work with students who have it, but I also work with students who don't have that self-motivation, but they still want to get there. And it's just the difference of understanding the amount of work that it takes to get there. And rather than having them be lazy and sit off to the side, that's totally normal. We're tired, our bodies fatigue. Explaining the difference of giving yourself rest rather than, not feeling it. Just the change of attitude. You need to have rest, so it's planned into your schedule. But things are still possible because you're still that human that has that drive, that fire passion inside, and you still have that brilliant mind to tell yourself where you want to go and what it takes for you to get there. And then today is a different day than tomorrow and yesterday. So if you didn't have a good day today, you will have the chance to make it an awesome day tomorrow.
Okay. Yes, absolutely. True. So true. Maybe not everybody has those skills. And sometimes that in itself can get ahead of them, or they came from, like my generation was, a lot of times was no pain, no gain. And we know, we've heard Tim talk on the podcast too about this, that mindset is just trouble. And so what's the cautionary tale, Tim, about this in terms of, are we, expecting too much from ourselves as young athletes and performers, but also where does that come where we're talking, let's say teachers are talking to parents who have high expectations because that's the way they were raised. How do we communicate this theory where we might have people in our community or our studio that want to push harder and we can see that's going to lead to some trouble down the road?
I think it starts with almost being kind to yourself and giving kindness to your students and explaining to them that if you can get, a highly commended and excellent or a distinction on an exam or a diamond award or a platinum awarded competition, that's okay. You don't need to peak too early, and we don't need 10-year-olds to be actually reaching the peak of their career. It's too young. So you can work progressively. You can have small bite-sized goals as you go and get a lot of passion and satisfaction out of the dance and the discipline just doing that. And remembering as well that everybody's doing it because of a love of performance and a love of dance and a love of the performing arts, essentially, and sort of keeping that at the forefront, I think that's a really important thing.
I'm going to add something too. Following the, let's say, 10-year-old at peak, what has been seen in the past is you say, okay, use your adrenaline, and then maybe you'll get your aerial on stage for that moment because you have so much power and excitement. That is putting that student at risk for big injury, because they have never executed it, let's say 10 times in a row in the studio before being able to go on stage under the lights in a costume with makeup and hair done perfectly as they've never had it in practice before. How you practice reflects your performance. If you are progressing safely and you're taking it slow and performing the skills that you're practicing, so that gives you the chance to be at that elite level for the 3 to 5 minutes that you're experiencing it. And then you get to challenge yourself executing the skills that you've worked so hard to do. That for me is the gold medal that you showed with all that extra challenge, the lights, the camera, the costume and makeup and hair, that you still were able to perform exactly how you practiced it. that's a safe approach.
Yeah, I think that is the reward, isn't it? Is to know that fundamentally you've got what you're performing solid because you worked on it and you earned that moment to stand there and perform it for the judges, family, friends, your studio, all of those things. And regardless of where the placement sits externally, you know that fundamentally. And I think that also, as you would suggest, leads to that progressionary, I keep using that term, but what I mean is that they eventually learn how to build and grow so that, like you said from the very beginning, they move into that professional level and they understand what that is fundamentally. And they have a respect for that so that their self-worth comes from inside in a very external, kind of experience sometimes.
What I learned from that, being a youth, let's say, passionate youth, becoming a professional athlete, what that taught me following that mindset was that once I was professionally trained, I went through the National Circus School, I did all the progressions, I had my executions down to a T because it became 40 hours a week of my training. Anytime I had an audition or anytime I had to go somewhere and a director said, Meaghan, I'd like you to do this skill here. I'd never done it before, but because I was able to execute all the progressions, I was ready for a new skill at any time. My body was trained, my mentality was trained because I understood the biomechanics of the skill. I went through it all. And so I noticed that once I became a professional, if I had never done a skill before, I could get it, let's say within a day or a week, because my body was ready to take on that new skill. With no injuries.
It totally makes sense. And that's such a great example. With that, I think our time is coming to a close, but let me know, is there anything else about this, Tim, that you wanted to add to this conversation? Anything else we missed that is really fundamental to this?
I will add just one thing, and I think it's honestly to listen to your body. As a physio, I'm seeing a lot of students who are coming out of lockdowns with the pandemic and rushing things too quickly. And I've seen some pretty severe injuries actually in the last 6 months from students who have been overdoing it and getting fatigued and not listening to their body when it's fatigued, because our body will actually raise flags and give us warning signs when an injury is about to happen, whether it's muscle cramping, joint stiffness, a twinge of pain that you don't necessarily pay heed to, or hitting that fatigue point when your form drops off and your technique drops off. That's when people get injured, so listen to your body because it does wave flags at you when it's had enough. And it's okay to have a rest and sort of work on that skill tomorrow or next week once you've hit that fatigue point.
Absolutely. And I think as we close this out, it's just, if you've heard this message so far, if you're listening, go back and listen again, because I think for teachers, parents, athletes who are, working through wanting to move faster or things to progress quicker, is to trust the process, listen to your body, trust your teacher, and know that all will come in good time. And I think we need to lead by example in our studios in that way too, as teachers and as mentors for young people, so that they know, like Meaghan, that, with hard work, dedication, progression, taking care of yourself, that you can get to wherever you want to be. But if, like Tim is suggesting, you're pushing too hard, you're not listening to your body, the injuries they face now as young people can inhibit those goals that they may have in the long run to sustain a career in the art that they've chosen. So Meaghan, Tim, I hope we hit the nail on this one. I am so grateful that you are here, and I hope people heed your message and your cautionary tales about taking things in stride and taking care of your athletic little people, big people, whatever it is, so that they may succeed in whatever they choose to do.
If you enjoyed this weekly mini presentation, head over to the Acrobatic Arts YouTube channel and you are sure to find an acro playlist that is perfect for you. Thanks for listening, everyone, and have a great day.